Hey everybody, and welcome back to Dude's Brunch. It's a comedy podcast about pop culture, internet garbage, and black coffee. I'm your host, Taylor Olmstead, and with me on our end-of-year special, going around the table, starting with my good buddy, Tyler Reed. Tyler, what'd you have for brunch today?
Hey everyone, I'm here live with myself and Catherine DiMartino. Say hi, Catherine.
Hi.
There you go, great. We went to First Watch for brunch, and so I had a cinnamon pancake, some eggs, and some sausage.
And Catherine, since you're there in the room with Tyler, what did you have for brunch today?
I had coffee black at first, but I always put the hazelnut creamer in the First Watch coffee, so whatever. And I had traditional breakfast, eggs, sausage, fruit, and potatoes.
Nice. Very strong. Were these home fried potatoes or hash brown potatoes?
Home fries. They were frozen in a what?
Yeah, First Watch's quality has really decreased in the past few years that we've been enjoying it.
It's really unfortunate. Of course, Sean Evans is here. We wouldn't do it without him. Sean, what did you have for brunch today?
I had the new chocolate and peanut butter Cheerios.
How are those? I've been meaning to try them.
They're not bad. They're like if Cheerios and Reese's had a little going on, little thing. I got like 4 boxes when they came out because they were like $1. So now I'm like kind of parsing them out little by little. But I mean, they're definitely worth $1. They're not worth like more than 2 or 3, but
there's probably a reason why they're $1 then. Because probably no one else wants them.
Well, they were a new item.
Oh.
So it's just a nice promo.
Zach Schockweiler is here. Zach, what did you have for brunch today?
I had a sausage McGriddle and a Filet-O-Fish from McDonald's. It was a panic order. I didn't mean to get those two varying things of the spectrum together, but I ate them both, and it was good.
So what you're saying is you had a brunch monstrosity and then an actual sandwich.
Yeah, it's not too different from my usual culinary choices. So
I just seem like somebody who'd be down for doing the Trump challenge on a regular basis.
What's the Trump challenge? Is that the Big Mac and all that stuff that he gets?
Yeah, 2 Big Macs, 2 fish fillets, and a large milkshake.
Ah, gee, that actually hurts just thinking about it.
The large milkshake is what kills it.
Yeah, that's actually everything. I was like, yeah, I could do that and feel kind of bloated. That milkshake is really just like death.
On a similar note, my roommate seems to think he can eat 100 chicken McNuggets. How do you feel about that, Sean? Do you think you could do that?
Dude, that's a lot of nuggets. Now 40 I think is a manageable goal, but 100 is like Nathan's hot dog kind of thing.
I think they sell 40-piece McNugget meals in places like Australia because they sell big family meals.
I mean, yeah, it seems like you should. I'm sure if you walked in and said, I want to buy 100 McNugs, they would not turn you away.
They'd also probably think you're pretty cool for saying McNugs.
Yeah, I'm going to say they probably wouldn't throw you out for saying McNugs. They'd be like,
here's your complimentary big glass of water.
Idiot.
Janet Ford, I sincerely hope that you did not eat 100 nuggets for brunch. What did you have?
Actually, Josh has gotten like hardcore into the making brunch scene, so we had eggs and home fries.
Lots of home fries today. I dig it.
I know. Well, his mom gave us an air fryer, just like randomly out of the blue, so we used that. And
does it work?
No. It's, it does. It's just, everything comes out really dry. So you have to coat everything in oil before you put it into the air fryer. So it kind of just counteracts. It's kind of disappointing. But yeah, it worked out. We realized we didn't have breakfast meat after we made the home fries. So that was kind of sad, but.
Yeah, that feels suspiciously missing from that combo.
Yeah, it was, we didn't have any meat. So I had 3 eggs instead.
Yeah, you just got to triple up on the eggs. I feel you.
Yeah. Go big or go home.
And rounding out the panel this week, we have Ben Pentecost. Ben, what did you have for brunch today?
I had half a Pop-Tart, not a Pop-Tart, a toaster tart, because I can't afford Pop-Tarts, so I have to buy the off-brand. But I had a fudge toaster tart and a cup of coffee.
Deliciously white bread. Well, I'm your host.
Keeping it simple.
I'm your host, Taylor, and for brunch this morning, I had a couple cups of coffee with a big bowl of Lucky Charms because I am a child.
Hey, don't diss Lucky Charms. I buy like the big box of Lucky Charms, like a lot, and Marshmallow Pebbles.
I can't do the Marshmallow Pebbles, but I do.
I know, yeah.
I get the Lucky Charms like maybe every 6 to 8 weeks. It's not a regular thing. It's just kind of a treat yourself type of thing, you know. Also, as I alluded to at the beginning, this is the Dudes Brunch end of year special. We do this every year, and so we're going to be running down a list of the best and worst things of 2017. This year we're going to go in alphabetical order. So, kicking it right off, our first person to give their best thing of the year is Catherine DiMartino. Catherine, what was your favorite thing of this year?
So my best thing, 2017, is the Adventure Zone balance arc, which maybe is an obvious one if you have been on the internet at all. But so the Adventure Zone is a podcast by the McElroy brothers and their dad, and it's their D&D podcast. It's really fantastic. But what I like about Taz, which is as it's known colloquially, is that it's what we need right now. Like the writing that Griffin did for it is really great. Like if it's representational in a lot of ways that we don't even see in normal fiction a lot of the times. And it made me cry for like 4 days straight. Also, so like that is pretty meaningful coming from me as somebody who's like, for it to be like a consistent mood for the entire time I was listening to the finale, that's pretty significant. But also, like, the Adventure Zone balance arc was really important for a lot of people this year, and they finished off that arc this year, and that was a big deal because it's been going for like how many years now?
Several. There's a lot of I would say like real play or like sort of like, did we have someone on the show talk about RPG podcasts, or they were thinking about it? I don't remember, but anyway,
We've danced around the subject of Dungeons and Dragons and RPG podcasts on this show a number of times, yeah.
Right. So, I mean, it's relatively become a fairly popular thing, I would say, within our cultural lexicon within the last, like, year or so. I would say mostly thanks to, like, Geek and Sundry and a lot of other... And, like, Wizards of the Coast has really been involved with streaming on Twitch, and they've been kind of recruiting people for that. So it's all sort of been... I think Catherine is also sort of, like, in general alluding to sort of, like, this popularity of role-playing, specifically, like, Dungeons & Dragons within the last year, and coming specifically kind of, like, in like recorded or video content. And so like I think the Adventure Zone is really great because it doesn't take the rules too seriously, and it gives it a very approachable perspective on the game. It's not exactly like super serious, so it's very funny and people can kind of get into that. And so it really kind of starts off kind of goofy and then kind of gets progressively more serious, more tonally serious over time. And so it really kind of draws you in. Like, you're kind of initially there just for the humor, you know, just kind of like for another like McElroy product, and eventually it kind of gets more exciting.
Yeah, I mean, that I think is the case for a lot of people, where you're kind of like laughing for the first half of the balance arc, and then suddenly, for me, I'm not spoiling anything, but for the 11th hour, I was like falling apart really rapidly every episode. And so that was significant, I think, like episodically, to be like having a moment a lot. But did anybody else listen to the Adventure Zone at all this year?
I'm just starting it. I'm about 15 or 16 episodes in. Mostly at Tyler's urging, because he's just been talking about it nonstop, and I've been really excited by it so far. I think it's a lot of fun. I like that it doesn't take Dungeons and Dragons too seriously, because as a kid, when I would try and play Dungeons and Dragons with people, they were always like sticklers about the rules, and they got really, really into like the numbers and the dice rolling and everything. And I like that this doesn't do that. It's very approachable. I also think, you know, Dungeons and Dragons is kind of having a moment right now. I feel like since Stranger Things and Critical Role and the Adventure Zone, like within geek culture, Dungeons and Dragons is becoming more popular, but I feel like it's also just becoming more of a piece of the cultural lexicon right now for normies, so to speak, than it was maybe a year ago. So
right.
Yeah.
I listened to the supercut. I really enjoyed it. I found it very endearing with their father and everything on it. That's my exposure to it. I thought it was very nice, and I am planning on listening to the rest of it. So
next up with their best thing of the year, it's Sean Evans. Sean, what was your favorite thing of 2017?
It's the Adult Swim app. People who know me know that I watch television in a very osmosic kind of way, if that's a word. So I basically just have it on in the background and just let it run while I do whatever I do, and then I'll occasionally stop and watch a little bit of it. But I used to do this on Netflix with Futurama and not Family Guy, Bob's Burgers, maybe some BoJack Horseman or Arrested Development. But after they got rid of 2 of those, I was like, nah, I'm not going to pay for this anymore. And I was looking around for one of these alternatives. I tried Amazon, I tried the internet, and I couldn't figure out anything until I really wanted to watch Venture Brothers. And then I got on to the app and I realized that they actually just run marathons on there all the time. So basically it's just saved the last half of my year for all my television needs because it fulfills this perfectly, and I can watch it on my phone or my iPad and put it anywhere in the house. It's fantastic.
Wait, so is this, you just get to watch all the stuff? Do you have to pay for this?
No, you can't. You don't have access to everything. But like, I mean, they're running right now. They're running Rick and Morty on there, just over and over and over. Venture Brothers over and over and over, and then they got all these other shows in there that I don't really watch, but that's not a big deal. Squidabilities too, I guess they have that on there. But
yeah, I have to say, the Adult Swim app came in handy in my household this year as well, because we were trying really hard to keep up with Rick and Morty, but didn't have a cable subscription, and that was the only way you could watch it. But the fact that it was free, and it was easy, and it had its own dedicated app, and you didn't have to do some kind of crazy, like, Comcast sign-in or anything like that, like, it was really nice, and kudos to Adult Swim for breaking free of the cable monopoly and figuring out how to get the content out there.
So you can stream whatever they happen to be streaming, and some episodes are available, right?
right,
Yeah, so some things are on demand.
there is commercials on those, but I mean, hey,
Okay, because I gave you all one of my worst links was an Adult Swim link to their website.
Yeah, and all the stuff that's on the Adult Swim website is also on the app.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay.
I feel like Adult Swim also just had a really good year this year. Like, they had a lot of really good runs on some of their, like, flag tentpole shows. Like, Rick and Morty had a really good season. I feel like Squidbillies is currently having a really good season. I guess
like
people
Real Talk?
still watch Robot Chicken.
I feel like Adult Swim is a dated concept.
Oh, no.
Not to like give you a really brutal take on it, but I don't have cable anymore, and there was no part of me, with the exception of my worst of the year, there was not a moment where I was like, I need to get Adult Swim.
You see, I'm the same way. No, I agree. So I get cable. My landlord actually pays for cable. So, but I'll be honest, like the last time I watched Adult Swim was like, I don't know, when I was in high school. Yeah. So for me, like, it's just, I don't know, my tastes have changed. So for me, I mean, I thought it was really cool. The app itself is great. I mean, especially that there's content for free that I think normal companies, and they would be charging, out the wazoo for. I think it's cool that they offer this service. But for like me, myself, as Janet Ford, like, again, I thought it was cool, but I don't really watch those shows. So it was
I mean, I'm pretty actually interested in using this app, but now that I've been playing around with it for a second, I'm like...
I mean, I will say this. I like the streaming capability here. There used to be a website that would stream old Toonami setups, like old Toonami blocks, like 24 hours a day, and I was really into that. So, like, I can definitely see the appeal here.
I mean, I think to say that there's nothing on Adult Swim that you didn't watch, I feel like is inaccurate. It's just that they have expanded their content into like other avenues. Because I mean, like technically, Samurai Jack, the new season was an Adult Swim show. So I mean, we just chose not to watch it on Adult Swim. So I mean, I guess in some ways that's saying that it is that better or worse for Adult Swim? Then they probably still get the money.
They
regardless.
do. They do.
Yeah. So it goes back to them.
yeah, somebody from Adult Swim, if you're listening to this podcast,
No.
new Venture Brothers,
Please, I second
get
that
on
motion.
that. Bring back the nozzle. We need more nozzle.
All right, Janet Ford is up next. Janet, what was your favorite thing of the year?
when I put this on the list, I was thinking more like my favorite thing that happened. And then like this morning when I was looking at everyone's things, I was like, oh man, I didn't really pick like a thing. But this is like the really cynical portion of me, because when I was thinking about the best and the worst, I was like, what happened in 2017? And like all of it was negative. And then I was like, you know what? But one thing that did make me really laugh was Fyre Festival earlier this year. Yeah, like totally cynical part of me, because I'm sure for all of those people who were stranded, like it was the most like stressful thing to ever happen. But as somebody who is poor and could not even fathom spending that much money to go to the Bahamas, to me, it was just like, it was the funniest and weirdest cultural experience that I've ever seen break out on social media. Because on one hand, it's like, okay, fine, like, rich people paid for this service and then they didn't get it. That's funny. On the other hand, you've got... I know, that's yeah. But, like, on the other hand, it's like you've got all of these, like, high name, like, all these models were involved. Like, you've got all these celebrities, and all of them were duped into this. And you've got this guy, and he just happened to just manage to get everyone to believe in him. So he's been arrested, and so I'm really interested to see where it goes from here. Just because, like I said, it's not every day that, and he was young too. He was like in our age group. It's not every day that you see somebody like that convince all of these celebrities and all of these companies to just work with him when he's never done it before. So it's not saying that what he did was good. I find that fascinating, though, that he was able to do that. And also, I don't know if you guys saw this trending this morning, but did you guys see the cheese plate thing? They were calling it the next Fyre Festival of Britain. It was this big cheese like a convention, and all these people signed up, and they were gonna get unlimited wine and unlimited cheese, and they showed up and there was like no cheese, and everyone was freaking out on social media about how they paid 40 pounds, I think. I'm not good with whatever. They paid 40 British money, and then my grandfather's probably rolling in his grave. But regardless, okay, it was like this big thing, and all these British people were livid that there was no cheese. So I saw that this morning as I got up, and I was like, oh, would you look at that, another Fyre Festival. So I
mean, to be fair, paying $50 for unlimited wine and cheese does sound too good to be
but
true.
that one specifically, I read it, and like all these people were like, I cannot believe you lied to me. There was no cheese, and there was just watered down wine. And I was like, yeah, I mean, I would expect that from a free cheese and free wine place. Like, what do you mean you're outraged? But
gosh, first Brexit, now this. God, they're really getting it.
Tough times.
I loved Fyre Festival, though. We did a whole episode on Fyre Festival. It's Dude's Brunch 96. There will be a link in the show notes. I mean, what a nightmare. Like, it looked so terrible. Like, it really and truly looked dangerous to be at Fyre Festival. But also, man, it was hilarious. Like, every part of that was just so funny. Oh, it was great.
It reminded me a lot of DashCon. When DashCon happened, like on the same level of just, you feel so bad for the people who believed in it, but at the same time, that is just some funny stuff.
It is like DashCon. I mean, I'm surprised there wasn't a ball pit or something.
I think I saw somebody like Photoshop the ball pit at a picture of Fyre Fest. I appreciated that.
I bet that happened, yeah.
My favorite part of the whole situation was just hilarious. As a poor person, I'm sad that happened to people, but like as a poor person, I'm glad that this happened to someone. But the funniest part that I think was one of the draws that they tried to promote was that this island that it was on was reportedly owned by Pablo Escobar. And that was like how they were trying to get people here. It was like, hey, this belonged to a drug kingpin, and you should come here because of that. And then it turns out he never owned an island in the Bahamas at all.
Yes, nothing says luxury like getting involved in a drug war.
I would like to point out that, did you already say Ja Rule had a hand in this a little bit? Like, was one of the celebrities?
Yeah, Ja Rule was one of the co-organizers.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring that up in case that wasn't already brought up, because... man, I had a joke about saying it's murder, but I forgot it, so we can move on. Cut that out.
All right, so I'm next, and my favorite thing of 2017 was Jack Antonoff. So Jack Antonoff, you probably remember him as being a member of the band Fun, and he's also the guy behind the alt-pop band Bleachers. But he kind of rose to a weird level of like secret prominence this year by producing songs for some of the biggest female pop artists in the game. He did a couple of songs with Taylor Swift, including Look What You Made Me Do and Getaway Car. He produced Green Light by Lorde, along with like 4 other tracks on her album. He did all of St. Vincent's most recent album. And his newest song, which is really high on the charts right now, is Beautiful Trauma by Pink. I'll link to a really good New York Times profile on him in the show notes talking about where he comes from and how he ended up doing all these songs. But for some reason, like, all of these songs he did this year with these pop singers just really, like, grabbed me. There's something about the sounds that he's using and the synths that he's using that I really enjoyed. And all of these songs are stuck in my head all the time. Like, New York by St. Vincent is probably my most played song of 2017. And I think I've spent the last 6 weeks, like, humming Pink's Beautiful Trauma in the back of my head. Like, they're just such ingenious songs. I love them.
It really feels like we're kind of in some ways in sort of like a musical slump. It feels like we're kind of like on the precipice of kind of like something new happening. So, I mean, like, it's kind of like, I've listened to a few of the songs you listed. They seem pretty good. I really, I enjoyed them. I mean, they're pop songs. I mean, like, that's usually not my spectrum. I'm currently still exploring jazz and, like, vaporwave. And so, and I randomly went back to ELL, some progressive rock. But anyway, but no, I'm actually, like, strongly considering, like, giving this Lord album a listen after I started listening to Kishibashi, like, last week, and I'm really into that, and it feels like kind of in the same kind of play space with this latest album. So
yeah, Lord's Melodrama is probably my favorite album of 2017. It's truly incredible.
I think she was definitely one of those artists that I feel like you can't, they came out, and then of course, like, people make jokes about them, like there's a South Park episode about it, and so for me, when that kind of stuff happens, I'm like, all right, well, I guess I'll check this artist out at some later date.
Yeah, now is the time. I feel like a lot of people slept on this Lord album because Greenlight was such a big hit, but the whole album, like, even the deep cuts, are really, really good. And there's something about, like, the way that I've read about Antonoff's work with these musicians is he goes into the studio with them and basically says, like, tell me about the worst thing that has ever happened to you, and we're going to write a song about it. And that really comes across in a lot of these songs. Like, none of the songs that he made with these women this year are happy. They're all about, like, really traumatic relationships and breakups and, like, dark moments in people's lives. But a lot of them are really poppy and upbeat, and I love a good dancey pop song that's actually really sad. Like, that's one of my favorite things in the world, and I feel like we had such a great year for that.
Yeah, that article that you gave us, the New York Times article, they kind of talked about it in there, how he, like, goes into all this stuff, and he, like, he wants to make his music like everyone feels what he was trying to get across, and there's, like, real emotional involvement in it. It's not just, like, mechanical, like, we're gonna play this and this is what it's about and that's it. It's like, this is, like, bearing out your soul to the world, or not, like, quite as that dramatic, but, like, it's really involved and invested in the music that he makes, which I really appreciate as a musician, because when I'm playing music, that's what I'm trying to do, is express how I feel about something, and writing something so personal is, like, it really does come across in all these. Like, I don't like any of these artists that he produced for. I'm, like, not a fan of any of them, but I listen to these songs and I'm like, wow, I could, like, if I had never heard them before and I just heard these songs, I was like, I could probably get into this, because it's the way he produces it is really moving to me, at least.
Yeah, this is kind of like apparently Michelle Branch on her latest album worked with, I believe it was one of the guys from the Black Keys, I think, and I think they ended up getting married or something. But, like, it's kind of like a similar thing where, like, kind of like these, like, sort of like these, like, alt rock kind of, like, legends are kind of like, well, I mean, I've made albums. Wow, let's do something. Let's make other people's albums, and that's kind of seems like a good idea. It seems like we kind of almost need some new blood, kind of in the scene, which was kind of what I was alluding to before. And this seems like a pretty exciting time to be into pop music.
Yeah, I just hope that this trend continues. Like, I want to see where all of these people go next year. I would love to see more emotionally vulnerable pop music in 2018, but we'll see. All right, so next up we have Ben Pentecost. Ben, you picked another of my favorite things. I'm so glad this got on the list. Talk to us about Baby Driver.
Yeah, so I picked the movie Baby Driver. I had never heard of this film. Like, I never saw any promos or any, like, trailers or anything. Taylor had texted me one day. He said, you have to go see this movie. And I was like, whatever, I'll go see it in a couple months or, like, when it's cheaper or whatever. And I watched it with my brothers a couple weeks ago, and I was just enthralled the entire time. So, it's about this kid. He's, like, indebted to, like, a kingpin. I guess he's like some drug kingpin or something. They never really explain it. Who is Kevin Spacey, ironically enough.
The movie came out in June, y'all. We didn't know any better.
It was before he was a bad guy, so it's okay. But he's a driver for a gang of thieves, and it's like a rotating group of thieves, and he just drives for all of them. But the thing that I thought was the coolest about this movie is he has tinnitus, so he has like a constant ringing in his ears, so he's always listening to music. And the soundtrack was like, I don't know, it just like, it took me to another place. It lined up with everything. It was like choreographed with the stunts in the film and just like everything they were doing. It was a great soundtrack. It was like an all-star cast of a lot, and they all did a good job. I thought there was a few tropes. There was like the whole manic pixie dream girl thing was going on, but it was endearing enough that you didn't notice. But I mean, I don't know. I was like, it's the first time in a long time that I've watched a movie from start to finish and not had to be like, all right, how much longer is going in this movie? Because I'm bored.
So a few things about this. I did recommend this to Ben, and I'm glad that he finally saw it, because as soon as I saw it, I knew that it would be a movie he would like. This movie was a really big deal here because it was shot in Atlanta and it takes place in Atlanta, which almost never happens. Movies are shot here all the time, but it's always Atlanta standing in for New York or Atlanta standing in for Gotham City or whatever. This is like as close to a homegrown Atlanta thing as you can get without it being Donald Glover's Atlanta series. The movie's directed by Edgar Wright, who did Shaun of the Dead and that whole series of movies, as well as Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. And so you do get a lot of those Scott Pilgrim vibes with this movie as well, where he's really leaning heavily into the tropes, which I think is where Ben gets that, like, oh, it's the Manic Pixie Dream Girl, and, like, it's a bank heist movie. But, like, Edgar Wright has said in interviews a lot that, like, he made this movie because he loves heist movies. And he just wanted to make, like, his take on a heist movie. And all I really knew about this movie going into it was that it was Edgar Wright, it was shot in Atlanta, and it was a heist movie. And I feel like knowing very little about this movie going into it is what makes it so powerful, because, like, Ben's right. From the very beginning, and we'll link to the opening scene in the show notes, like, the first 6 minutes of this movie are just, like, full throttle. There is no exposition whatsoever. Like, the screen goes from, like, titles to a bank heist, and you're just in it, and you go. And I love that about this movie. Like, for a movie about a getaway driver, it moves so fast for the full hour and a half or 2 hours. It's an absolute thrill. And I saw it in a drive-in over the summer, which was like, it was just like perfect. It was, oh man, I cannot stress to y'all how much I love this movie.
I mean, I don't give a shit about cars, but this is arousing. I'm into this.
So, I don't love heist movies, but I love good, like, high adrenaline car chases that are actually shot well. Like, Gone in 60 Seconds was not good enough for me. But I did love the Crank movies. And so this is like that has like a kind of spiritual kinship with this, I feel like, where you're just like going the whole time. And Tyler knows and is upset at me sometimes because I love movies that are just like on the whole time. I mean, I want to see this. I've heard, like, mixed reviews about it, actually. But that's because I'm, like, you know, I am a part of a group of people, or I listen to a group of people that, like, will pick anything apart. And they'll be like, oh, this is a problematic problem, like, thing in this. But that doesn't mean that it's not a good movie, or, like, that there's not a lot of clever things happening, or that it has to be more complicated than a heist movie.
Yeah, this is not a complex film.
Yeah.
I think part of what makes it so engaging, not to go back to my other point, is the soundtrack is when there's not action happening, like something that the characters are doing is relating to what Baby, the main character Baby, is listening to, because whatever he's listening to, you're always hearing, and it's like it's all like interconnected with the action and the non-action.
And one of my favorite anecdotes about this movie, it came out in like June or July. And so Edgar Wright actually sat down with James Gunn, the director of the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, because both of them were shooting here in Atlanta, and they sat down together and picked out like which songs they were using, because both movies are so soundtrack intensive and they didn't want to use the same song in each movie. And so when you so when you watch the two of them together, like it just feels like such a great moment for movie soundtracks.
I mean, I know this probably gets old after a while, but like I really enjoy like a really interwoven like non-score based, like kind of like soundtrack. I really like when they use like real songs, and I think if they do it well, it ends up being really good. And this seems like a movie that was probably very thoughtfully considered, the songs that included, what time it was included, and how it's used. So I'm really interested in seeing this movie at some point. This probably bumps it up on my list of things. Catherine and I watched Ace Ventura 2 like last week, and I fell asleep during that. So
this is a much better movie than Ace Ventura 2, When Nature Calls, let me tell you.
Then we watched The Santa Claus and had a lot of moments about it.
Yeah.
Sean, Zach, anything on Baby Driver before we move on?
Not seen it. Watched the opening scene earlier. I will watch it. Sorry, nothing good to say here. It looked good, like Edgar Wright's other work. Don't know how I missed this one.
Probably because it's called Baby Driver, and you're like, I don't want to watch a movie about a baby driving a car. That sounds
what
dumb.
is this, a CGI baby driving a Rolls Royce? Who cares? Come on.
It's the sequel to Baby Boss.
I thought it was a sequel to Baby's Day Out.
God damn it, Alec Baldwin, why did you make that movie?
What's the water movie with the mermaid boyfriend?
Water movie with the mermaid
Little Mermaid?
What?
The movie? No, the new one that just came out.
The Shape of Water?
The Shape of Water. You're like, sometimes you like read a movie title and you're like, this sounds dumb as hell. Like, because you feel like they never show you like a picture of like anything. It's always just, you just read the title and what times it's aired. You're like, why would I want to see
Because
this?
it's Guillermo del Toro and it's up for a bunch of Oscars.
Oh, this movie?
And it's right up my alley.
That's right. Mermaid
That's
boyfriend.
not a mermaid. That's like the creature from the Black Lagoon. That's a monster.
Prince Sidon is the best boyfriend.
Aren't mermaids monsters?
All right, let's move on. So Tyler, you're up next. Tyler, what was your favorite thing of 2017?
All right, so my favorite thing was, I would say the Nintendo Switch, which is also kind of coupled with Breath of the Wild, because really I think Breath of the Wild kind of sold this console, at least initially. I think the Nintendo Switch is probably one of the most one of my most favorite consoles that has ever come out, because I'm very much so I've really enjoyed like the Game Boy Advance and the SP or the DS. There was great consoles, and I've never really found myself really wanting to sit in front of a TV to play games. And so the Switch has kind of allowed me to not only play games handheld, but also to play them on TV if I want. And what's also kind of really great is that it's almost sort of like a party game sort of platform where you can play games like in pretty much any social setting. With a little kickstand, you can basically pull out controllers or just turn two different controllers, and you can just hand off to people. And so it's been really exciting for me to use this, like in various settings. I mean, Catherine and I played it at like her dad's house. We played Mario Kart. I mean, it was very difficult, but I mean, it got the point across. There's the Jackbox games are on there, and there's that. But I mean, if you really need to say it, like there's Skyrim on it, so you're like, well, I can play Skyrim mobily, which I don't. I don't know if I need to play Skyrim for like the 10th time, but it just seems like a great. I think Nintendo really struck gold here, whereas like the Wii U was so close to being a hit, and I think they needed that console to fail in order for the Switch to succeed. And I'm fine with that. Catherine bought us a Wii U. I mean, we played a few games, but there wasn't a lot to play. But I mean, it was a great console, all things being said, despite the lack of games. But I mean, I've just been loving the Switch. I don't think anyone else here has one, correct?
Just me.
Actually, my roommate has one, so there's one in our household. And
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, Josh has one.
I love that thing, Tyler. Like, I'm so glad you picked this because I did want to talk about it. I think it's probably my favorite, like, tech of 2017. Definitely my favorite, like, material object. It's so, like, it's just so fun. And my roommate and I find ourselves constantly, like, hearing about new games coming out and saying, well, when is it coming to the Switch? And it's so nice that now in December, like almost a year after it launched, it's finally getting games at the same time that they're launching on Steam. Like, it doesn't feel like a second class platform. It really feels like people are building games for this device. And I love that it's portable and TV because, I mean, we've both spent hours and hours and hours playing Breath of the Wild, but also sometimes he'll be, playing Mario Rabbids while I'm like catching up on something on the TV, or I'll be like playing Goner while he's watching reruns of Cheers. Like, it's nice to be able to do that. And it's so, like, it's just such a handy little console. I also want to give a quick shout out to Snipper Clippers, which is my favorite party game on the Switch.
Yeah.
So much fun. Absolutely love it.
I feel like, well, one thing I want to add to this, I don't want to belabor like how amazing the Switch is or anything, but my unique experience with the Switch has been using it for like my 2.5 hour infusions. And I just have to sit in a boring room. And that is a space that would normally be filled by like a 3DS game, but sometimes you want a little bit more than that, or something that is just a little bit more substantial. And I was playing Breath of the Wild at like several of my infusions this past year because it was just like, of course I want to keep playing Breath of the Wild because it's like huge, but also like it's also was a conversation piece for a while, which is interesting because of the scarcity. When the Switch was first released, Tyler and I both had one, and so it was like, if you had it anywhere, everyone was like, ooh, is that the Switch? Let's talk about the Switch. My kid wants a Switch. And so, like, everybody at the infusion center would want to talk about it and talk about what we were doing, like what I was playing, whatever, and that was something I haven't seen since, like, the Game Boy, where people would be like, what are you playing on your Game Boy? Because the Game Boy bridged a generational gap.
Yeah, I think, so like I said, Josh has a Switch. I didn't play Breath of the Wild, but one thing, and I will keep this short just because I'm going to echo everyone's thoughts, but the one thing that I think Nintendo really always just blows out of the park, Wii U was a little bit different, but they always make a game console that is, you don't have to be a quote-unquote gamer to be able to use it. I mean, I'm 24. I can figure out a PlayStation, but I know that not everyone, like, PlayStation is another level. Like, I always find that Nintendo makes things that my parents can figure out, that older generations can figure out, and young children can still have fun. So I think that the Switch is another phenomenal console that they've made that makes it fun for everyone, and they offer a lot of different games that appeal to a lot of different type of people. So I've always really liked Nintendo for that. Though I was talking to Josh about it, and he did have a good point. So this year, 2017, they came out with a lot of good games. I'm interested to see, though, what next year is going to bring, because they brought out a Legend of Zelda game this year and a Mario game. So I think it's going to be a few years before we see another game like from either of those franchises. So I think it'll be really interesting to see what we see next year, what if the games are going to continue to be as good, or if they kind of showed all of their cards a little bit prematurely. So that's what I'm excited for next year, to see what they, if they're going to continue to bring out bangers, and if they're going to continue to bring out these phenomenal games that everyone's talking about, or if we're going to have a kind of a dead year next year, and then maybe 2 years from now we're going to start seeing games again. So that's what I'm looking forward to.
Anybody else on the Switch?
My time with it has been very brief, but I've enjoyed it thoroughly. I've got a chance to mess around with Breath of the Wild. I haven't had a chance to play Mario Odyssey, but the thing I wanted to comment on is a little bit of what Janet had said, and I'm interested to see what they do next year, because having a Legend of Zelda and a Mario title within the same year is is crazy enough as is. And there's usually, correct me if I'm wrong, there's usually like almost a 4 to 5, if not more, year buffer rate of time before the next entry in both those series. At least a canon entry. Well, Mario canon, come on. But you get it. And but it'll be interesting to see what new things they have, because I worry that it's just going to be a port fest, because we've got like Skyrim, we've got Doom coming to it, and it's like who gives a shit? Like, those games have already come out. Like, I don't know. I'm sure they'll have some good stuff.
My big hope for the Switch next year is retro ports. I want to see some classic GameCube stuff and some Super Nintendo stuff hit the Switch.
Oh, give me that Chrono
Yeah,
Trigger
exactly.
on
I
there.
think that
that'd be cool,
could be super fun. If you want to
With the
if you want to go
cutscenes.
back in time and hear what we all thought the Switch was going to be based on the promo video, we did an entire episode of this podcast just about the launch video for the Nintendo Switch. It's episode 73, Freestyle Gaming Street Cred. And it'll be interesting to see how that episode compares to what we actually think of the Switch now, a year in. All right, so last but certainly not least, Zach Schockweiler, what was your best thing of the year?
My best thing of the year for me, because I'm a huge nerd, is the third and most recent trailer for Hideo Kojima's game Death Stranding, which no one knows what the fuck it's going to be about, which is why this is really interesting to me. All the previous 2 trailers were very very like movie like everything that Hideo Kojima has ever done, and there's just like the mystery and everything, and like the weird like inclusions of technology and what seem to be like weird time jumps or like merging of different timelines, and just unexplainable and intangible like concepts and things that are thrown in there have made them like, I don't know, a visual spectacle that are worth rewatching, even though it's just a trailer for a video game. I just think that I think that the game is going to be something that's going to be very fun. But it's like, until that game probably won't come out for like 8 years, which is just how Kojima rules, unfortunately.
That is exactly what. So when I saw this on the thing, because Josh, like, he watches E3 he is big into what's coming next. And I asked him about it, and literally the first thing he said was, nobody knows what the fuck it's about. And then the second thing he said was, well, we're not even going to see it until 2022, so it doesn't even matter.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, we're not. But I saw the trailers, really creepy, but very beautifully done. And again, since I am not in the world of gaming, I thought, I'm intrigued how all 3 trailers have, the only thing that they have in common were the dead crabs in the very beginning and the weird baby hands. So I'm interested to see the storyline. But I think it's funny that you brought it up, because those were literally the first 2 things that Josh said. He was like, nobody knows what it's about, and we're not going to see it. I was like, okay.
Yeah, it's so funny to me, like, when I read in the show notes that your favorite thing of the year was a trailer for a thing that's not even coming out next year, I was like, what the hell are you talking about, Zach? And then I watched this trailer, and I was like, holy shit. Like, this is basically a short film, this trailer.
Yeah.
It's gorgeous. It creates this really fascinating world while really only giving you like the tiniest claustrophobic little glimpse of it. And there's almost no dialogue. It's completely CGI or like in-game animation, but it's so artfully done. There will be a link in the show notes. Like, I don't know how to describe this for the listeners without them just taking 10 minutes and watching this. Also, it's a 10-minute long trailer for a game that has no release date. Like, this is probably the most 2017 thing ever.
So, my favorite thing about Death Stranding is Hideo Kojima and Mads Mikkelsen.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, what the fuck? Why is it Mads Mikkelsen? It's Mads Mikkelsen! Like, this dude is everywhere. Like, he's an amazing actor, and he's just, like, casually doing this trailer for this game. Like, what?
Okay, you need to be on Twitter a little bit more, Taylor, because they went on a date together, and everybody ships them now, and they gave each other gifts. Hideo Kojima thinks that Mads Mikkelsen is like the coolest guy.
Because Mads Mikkelsen is the coolest guy.
You'll just like watch him smoke, like, sure, that's fine. But I'm just saying that, like, that I can't, like, for me, Death Stranding is, I mean, I deal with like artwork that's kind of, you know, like tries to approach me this way pretty frequently. I'm kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, that's probably symbolic, or if it's literal, then it's also symbolic. That's fun. You know, okay, I'm ready to play it now, I guess. Like, I don't know, I'm not shocked by it.
I really appreciate all the work that's going into this, and then I just can only just imagine it's just like Metal Gear Solid again. It's just a stealth tactics action game.
Hope it's
the
not.
same mechanics.
I hope not. That was like someone was fucking with me the other day. And I was like, he won't make that. He's been making stealth games for like 2 decades now. I would hope he'd want to do something different. The funny thing is, oh, sorry.
I mean,
go ahead.
like, it's okay. It's just so obviously like if you would if you followed the Metal Gear series from the beginning, you could tell it was really just like, all right, it's a story about a guy, and he's got a gun, mate, sometimes, and he's gonna like go on a stealth mission, and he's gonna kill some people, rescue some people. Who knows? You know, you just don't know. And then it just continuously gets more off the fucking rails. Like by the time you get to like the 4th or 5th game, like Metal Gear Solid was like, ooh, it's a little weird. Ooh, change the controller port on your game. Oh, it's crazy. But like by the end, it's just like, I'm rated a cyber ninja with my attack dog, and we are the Patriots. Ooh, lay low, and it's like
The lale lule low. Thank you.
and you're slipping on bird poop in an oil factory.
It's let's be fair. It's an over-exaggerated War and Peace with cyborg ninjas and robot dinosaurs. It's not that complicated. All right.
So that was all of our best of the year, and we will be back soon with the worst parts of 2017.